Order at 7:02 p.m. Meeting of the Board of Library Trustees. So welcome everybody. No, there's Tom. Hey Tom. Why don't we just start with the minutes and then I'll go, since Tom is just settling in, we'll start with the minutes and approve them. So we have two sets of meeting minutes. The meeting minutes from May 28th and June 17th. The June 17th was relatively recent. I know Kim just sent them around a little bit later, so.
Sorry, can I interrupt?
Yep.
Do we do an attendance?
No,
We don't.
no, I don't think so. We don't. We do when we're on Zoom and make sure that everybody is recognized.
Okay.
Yeah, it's generally caught in the minutes, and sometimes if people are absent, right, or excused, right, we like to mention one or the other, because if people are just absent, if there's more than 4 absences in a row, then we have, the board charter has different action items we need to take.
Yep.
If people are absent. Yep.
Okay, so the two meeting minutes up for approval are May 28th and June 17th. June 17th was that special meeting we had last week, half in person and half in Zoom.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the May 28th, 2025 regular meeting minutes.
All right. Do I have a second? Motion made and seconded by Chris. Any discussion?
Will that be brought up on the screens?
I can bring it up. The meeting minutes, are these in order? Oh yeah, they are. So we have the May 28th meeting minutes currently on the screen. You guys can see that. Any discussion, questions?
Did we have
comments?
a second on that?
We did. Chris seconded it.
All right.
Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the May 28th minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? I declare the motion carried.
So,
Did everyone get a chance to read the June? Because if they didn't, then we can just
are they,
push those to next week.
so on these, on the meeting agenda that Kim sent out, is this in other words, I have the unstamped version. Did the stamped version list 617?
Yes.
It did? Okay,
Yeah, that's what I'm showing you here.
okay.
That's what I'm going off of. This is the
Oh,
latest
okay, gotcha.
packet.
All right.
But we recognize that it was just submitted this afternoon. So if the group didn't get an opportunity to read those, then I would just say, let's just pass over them and we can go through the next month.
Yeah, I'd like to pass over them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. We don't have to have a motion to pass over them, do we? I don't think so. Yeah, so
I
we'll
think
just
by consensus, we can agree to it.
we'll just push that to next month. So then I'll scoot back a little bit and recognize that Tom's here. We all know that Tom has resigned. His last day is, I think, officially July 11th. Yep, officially July 11th. So I do want to recognize the work that Tom has done over the past year. I say he jumped right in. Right when he started, we already had some not issues. We had challenges in the library. The children's room was closed. Still going through that remediation from the floods. There's been just ongoing, I guess, building maintenance issues that we're all aware of. The HVAC continues to have issues. The elevator, so a lot of building maintenance that Tom's been dealing with over the last year. He's been working with the staff, obviously, to get different aspects of the library open, primarily the children's library or children's room. So that was definitely a major event when we finally got that all worked out. So that was a lot of work that Tom did with the town administrator and dealing with that, and of course the staff to do all the logistics with moving it and getting it ready and getting it open. I think over the last year, through his direction and of course with working with the staff and their work, the library has continued to expand services over the last year. We've had some great numbers with new memberships and new library cards. So thanks to Tom for all the work that you've done over the last year on that. And certainly want to wish you the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yep.
that.
Thank you. So I'll certainly open it up if anyone else has any comments.
Thank you, Tom. We appreciate all the work that you did this past year.
Thank you.
And wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I mirror those sentiments as well. It's a lot of moving parts, and it's never easy. Even when someone were to come in when things are running smoothly, to acclimate themselves to a new work environment and staff and everything. But the challenges we had faced as you entered were, pretty interesting to say the least. And thank you for this past year.
Thank you.
You also had to deal with two chair people because I
Yes.
think right after a
even
couple months
realize
we
I-
reorganized.
Yep.
Well, thank you. So at least from the trustees' perspective, right, we met last week and we'll be working on, I guess, the next few weeks of transition period, working with Tom to make sure that we capture all the key activities and decisions that need to be made while he's still here, and make sure a lot of that information gets written down and disseminated to the larger group so that we're aware of everything. And then obviously begin the search for the new director. All right. So just continuing on, we do have a very full agenda. So I do want to keep everything moving so that we can get through it in a reasonable amount of time. So next up are the bills. There's currently 4 warrants, 48, 49, 50, and 51.
Mr. Chair, do you need a separate procedural motion that we tackle these as one? Or
I will
or-
entertain a motion, if we want to do it as a
all right,
consent
all right,
agenda.
All right, I move, Mr. Chair, that we address the bills as a consent agenda.
All right.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. So we're going to consider all 4 warrants in one vote. And so I'll open it up to see if there's any questions on any of the warrants.
All right.
I think discussion.
I'm sorry,
for the
discussion.
motion.
The what?
In other
Discussion
words,
for the motion. We have to vote to do it as a.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So, the first vote is if we're going to take it as a group of 4. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I declare that motion carried.
all right, and so, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve warrant number 48 in the amount of $12,149.21. Warrant number 49 in the amount of $6,149.48. Warrant number 50 in the amount of $4,271.14, and warrant number 51 in the amount of $2,854.76.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Aaron. Any discussion on any of the warrants? Certainly any of the new trustees, if you have questions on light items, feel free to reach out to us in advance or reach out to Tom if you had any questions on that. Most of them, as you probably see, are just general purchasing of equipment and content and media. All right. Without further discussion, all those in favor of approving is it considered a consent agenda? I don't know.
Or the warrants.
The warrants as one. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I declare the motion carried. Thank you.
Can I make a motion that in the future we always vote for them together in a consent agenda? Can we I feel like every meeting we vote to do it that way. Can we say we'll always do it that way unless we go the opposite, or is that not an option?
It's a good question. I mean, because sometimes we might only have 1 or 2 warrants, sometimes we have more. So
Sometimes they could be bigger amounts too. Like these were.
yeah,
you know,
these are
pretty-
relatively small.
So none of us were really concerned about these,
Perfect.
but sometimes there are bigger ones.
Yeah, so I would just in favor of just doing it each time, depending on the number.
That's
Yeah,
perfect.
okay.
That works. Thank you.
Moving along to ongoing business. The first one is an HVAC update as well as an East Coast fire quote update. Did that fire quote make it into the packet, Kim? Do you remember? I'm not sure it did.
I did share it with everyone, but I do have.
Okay. Nope, that was just asking that.
Yep. I do have that.
So Tom, do you want to update on those 2 pieces?
Sure. So, let's do the fire one first. I did reach out to both the town administration just to see if they were familiar with this company and the procedure. They gave a vote of confidence that that they are a vendor that we worked with before. Looking back at previous library work, it seems that they have been in before. My question previously about it being a 5-year review, considering it seemed a little early for that, was they reminded me that but the building's been around, right? So the review, the inspections were going on before we did the new maintenance on the old building. So it did kind of make sense that they would, that would be time. I reached out to the fire department as well, and in review of you know what I was telling them of what we were seeing on here, they said that sounds completely reasonable. They're just looking for making sure that your system's in order. And then there was one repair for something that they had identified that was a cracked valve. So having spoken to the town and to somebody from the fire department, I'm comfortable that this is legitimate and something that should be moved forward on.
Is that something, I mean, is that just standard maintenance that would be in your budget? So probably nothing, do we need to be voting on that?
It is it does seem to be a standard inspection, and so I'm not sure whether this one particularly is in this budget.
So
It would require getting another quote from them because this quote expired.
There is
Okay.
a note in here, it says unbudgeted, right?
I can't find it in the
Yeah,
meeting minutes.
It's in the packet. It says
Page
3,000,
4.
yeah, page 4, yes. In the contingency section, it says $3,051.29 unbudgeted.
Okay.
Oh, this is the director's report.
Mr. Chair, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
So this is something that's appropriate to be paid for out of the budget. Then I would just give Tom our authorization to move forward with paying for it out of the budget. If down the road, you know, we find that there's other needs that can't be funded because of something like this, I know it's hard to think that far forward, but at that point, then we could consider, you know, paying for anything that is kind of above and beyond, you know, if our budget doesn't cover, you know, certain things like building maintenance. So if it's appropriate, I would just authorize.
Yeah,
Tom
I
to
agree.
move
I
forward.
think this is just part of the standard budget.
Yeah, it's not very.
So I don't think we need to be voting on it at all.
Yep.
Okay. But that will be an item that you said you need to get a updated quote, and
So
then
the
we'll
quote
have
did
to.
expire already. So excuse me, hold on one sec. Yeah, that's fine. So I'll just need to reach out to them and ask for another quote.
Okay.
And frankly, by the time that's done and scheduled, it will probably be coming out of the 26 budget.
Yeah,
So
that
it
would be
won't
July.
be from the 25 budget. So we certainly have plenty of money there.
Yep. So I would suggest having that high on your list so
Yep.
that you can take care of that before
I will,
you're done.
if
Okay.
the board wants me to, I will go ahead and work on scheduling that.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that an absolute certainty that it cannot be, we won't have it in time to be expended from the current 2025 budget? Because I would say, you know, that would be prudent to expend that money, you know, with the current budget.
Yeah, I mean, assuming that we have the budget in the current fiscal year budget, I would also encourage that to get done this fiscal year.
Because the vendor may say, oh yeah, we can just use that, you know, that quote.
But today is the
But
25th
we're a
of
week,
June.
we're a week,
yeah.
we're a week away from July 1st.
Yeah.
So I don't see it happening.
So,
And
okay,
the
it's a
4th of
certainty then.
Yeah, okay.
Fine.
I don't see it happening within that time frame.
Okay. Any other?
Well, the HVAC, I mean, I wish I had better news to share about the HVAC. We recently had one of the compressors units reinstalled, and we're still experiencing issues in the area that it was supposed to fix. Referring to my director's report, since the installation of the latest unit, there remained some issues in the area that the compressor was supposed to resolve, primarily the community room, the lower level kitchen, and the children's programming room. Thermostat in these areas is, as for all hybrid zones, is set to control the temperature automatically and keep the temperature between 68 and 72. Shortly after the installation in May, when it was still somewhat cool out, so it should have been doing the heat, it was in the children's programming room, it was very low in the 60s, blowing out very cold air. It felt like the air conditioning was on, and this was way before we were putting the air conditioning on. Then as well, this past week and continuing on through today, the lower level kitchen area was getting up to about 80.
We noticed that firsthand at the Friends annual meeting. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
quite hot.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, it is actually blowing out hot air.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the settings for those zones are set. I've checked them numerous times. They are set to go on automatically, to regulate it automatically, and to keep it between 68 and 72. It's clearly not doing that. So I have reached out to Renaud about this, indicating that it seems that it didn't fix what it's supposed to fix. And unfortunately, their response was, well, that would be another visit. We would need to come out and take a look to see what's going on. So,
Do you think, I know this isn't, this will probably go well beyond your last day, but it seems like we need to get the town administrator more closely involved with Renaud so that we can, like you said, I think a month or two ago, like really look at the big picture of this whole situation and just see if there's either a different recommendation by Renaud or something else we should be looking at.
I think it's a much larger conversation.
Yeah.
Because again, with this, and then, you know, if it's another visit that they're going to come out, that's billable. And then if they find something, that's billable. And even as we've seen in the past, if the parts are under warranty, as the units have been, the installation is still expensive.
Right.
Mr. Chair, as far as Renaud's concerned, would your recommendation to involve the town administrator, is that because Renaud basically services the town?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, because I was just thinking you'd probably
And
get
they've
some
been-
pushback as far as us being, in charge of that building.
Right. But just two reasons. One is they manage the rest of the town. I think that's one of the reasons we went with Renaud was from the town administrator's recommendations.
Okay.
And the town administrator has been on all these email threads, so they're should be closely familiar with the situation.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point, because we have a vendor who the town uses, and we have a new building, 2021. They didn't install it, right? They're just inheriting it, right? And so whether there's something that is beyond their diagnostic capabilities, or there's just something that they don't know about because they weren't involved in the installation of it. And very few HVAC companies are, right? They would be with a new construction, but and I don't think we're at this point yet. But it almost seems like we might want to get someone else to take a look at it. And I know LG's taking a look at it too.
Yeah.
But then we're starting from square one.
Well, I think one thing that Renaud could help us with is, and LG, I guess, because LG was going to look at the whole system and make sure that it was sized correctly, which I think they determined it was, right? Is if we need to go to a another product as far as the condensers and stuff,
Yeah.
which of course will be expensive, but if it's a better long-term solution.
Right.
Okay, so I will, with Tom's help over the next week or two, just ask for some support from the town administrator for dealing with this.
One question I might have here is, particularly in light of Tom leaving in a couple weeks' time, does it make sense to have since this has been going on for so long, have a subcommittee specifically focused on the HVAC system, so that this doesn't go on? There's a touch point for that.
I think personally that would be a great idea, because otherwise it's, right, it's gonna come to me as the chair.
Yep.
So it would be great if someone else could take on some of that. Is anybody volunteering?
I'm
Does
half
anybody-
volunteering if no one
Okay.
else is interested, but yeah.
I don't think for subcommittees we need to have a vote or anything like that, do we?
I
No,
think
Because
we do.
he'll come back to the board for any decisions
I
we
think
have
you,
to make.
you appoint the subcommittees
okay.
Oh, okay.
into your
Okay.
purview.
Yep, okay, so I would, agree, and I would appoint you as the UNI, to support the HVAC,
Okay.
decisions. Thank you, Chris,
Good
for
idea.
volunteering. Great. Okay, next is the teen office.
Yeah, and Doug, you had reached out to the town to look into whether there was any underlayment, and they worked with maintenance to determine that there was not. I guess that was, you were wondering if there was extra underlayment to install or
Correct.
installation, right? So there's not, and then you provided the other, you combined the other quotes. So it looks like we have the two quotes ready to go for that. So that would just be an approval, and now it's ready to move forward.
Yeah, I was thinking this was something, but yes, Tom's correct that with the town administrator and Tom came up with this other vendor that's both the installer and the source, which is Floor and Decor in Shrewsbury. We got an updated quote with the group's help, including Debbie's. We got the quote. It was requested for funding, and that group went to the capital campaign. And actually, I believe we got full approval for that, right?
We did, but I just want to clarify. So when we say teen office, we really mean the gaming room.
That's why I
right?
was
Not
confused.
actually the teen office,
That's why I was
right?
confused.
So,
This
I
is
thought-
the
yeah,
teen.
yeah.
This is really the teen.
teen updates, but
what do they call
teen
that?
room updates. It's the gaming room.
The gaming
Yeah.
room. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's the back left corner, right?
the
Yes.
purple
Okay,
room.
yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, actually, happy to say that the capital campaign agreed to fund that. I think the total cost was a little over $4,000 for the material, the underlayment, and the installation.
Excellent.
It was a little confusing just because we have had issues with the teen office with the HVAC,
Right.
so I thought maybe
Right.
it was
Yep.
related to that.
Exactly. That's what I was
So,
thinking
yeah.
too.
Just put some more flooring in; it'll be fine.
Yeah, I was like, oh, insulation.
It's not going to fix the HVAC, no. But we can get the gaming room looking a little more
That's
presentable.
great.
Great.
So look into scheduling that.
Yes. Yeah, so the last quote we had, the material was like on back order, but they said mid-June, and of course it's past mid-June, so I suspect that the flooring will be in fairly quickly once we place the order. Okay,
And from the capital campaign.
correct.
Okay.
Next up is the budget and finance
Okay, me again.
from Tom again.
This is a really hard time of year to talk about budget because we have a lot of moving parts. And so we have been working diligently to make sure that all the orders were in for materials and to wrap up a few final things. Eileen LeBlanc has been fantastic getting everything done. We are we're at a good place. I say it's a little hard to talk about right now. And by that I mean that June is almost the hardest time to talk about where the budget is, because there are things encumbered and there are things that we're waiting for. So we still have materials that have been ordered that we're waiting to come in, and finalizing some invoices. But I'm confident that we clearly met the 15% for the
That's
materials budget
great.
for the MBLC, which is the real one that we had to make sure that we got to. Recently, we were down to being just about $5,000 away. I placed an order for ebooks, take care of a little bit of that.
Great. That's a
We
good
still have
idea.
some things rolling in, and there are also some other elements that can be counted towards that, such as museum passes. So the 15% is not going to be an issue.
That's one of the things that we really do appreciate, you know, when you jumped in to make sure that we're on track with that, with the MBLC filing, so thank you.
say it was my pleasure, but it wasn't. But it was accomplished. And for the overall budget, as of today, we are right at about 94%, which a week away from the end of the fiscal year, I think is right where we want to be.
Great.
So I do foresee that there will likely be some extension beyond what the budget was for. Partly because, if you recall, this budget, the 25 budget, was done when it was believed that the MBLC requirement was 13%. So the town had originally budgeted for that. And then we discovered that it was actually 15%. So they were a little bit off. So there'll be probably some overspending from what the library's budget was. So it may come back to you at a later date for some of that.
Okay.
Do you have an estimate, or a guesstimate as to how
I tried
much
to
that
figure
might
that out
be?
today, and what I was looking at for the materials, I felt was going to be about $5,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Which I will say, we talk about this 15%, and yes, 15% of it is an exact number. Hitting an exact number in something like this is virtually impossible, because you don't want to be $1 under and not reach that 15%. So your only other option is then we have to kind of overextend a little bit in order to make sure that we hit it. Things go in back order, right? So we could place an order for $2,000 worth of books, and if $1,500 worth of it goes on back order from the distributor, then we're short what we thought. So hitting that number exactly is impossible, and so you in a situation like this, you certainly want to err on the side of caution.
For next year, did we budget exactly 15%, or did we do like 15% for next year and like an extra 1,000 or two just to build in that buffer?
What was budgeted in was 15%. Yeah. So the 2026 fiscal year 2026 budget was budgeted for 15% of the overall budget. Yeah.
So, as far as the way the MBLC is asking for the information, is it basically we're monitoring in some line item deliverables, and that's the number we have to hit? In other words, you had mentioned that if something's on back order, and that it doesn't count.
So it's based on when it was originally ordered and then when it's invoiced, when it's received.
Okay.
So
Yeah, 'cause we
so
don't
there's
own it.
and so there's still a little leeway with what we're working with. So things that were ordered this month that may not arrive until July 5th, that still counts.
All right.
So,
That still counts for us.
so if the overall budget, if the total budget ends up going over a little bit,
Yeah.
does the 15% get calculated as what you actually spent for
It was what the original budget was planned for.
But does the MBLC hold us to 15% of the original budget, or what we actually end up with at the end of the year as the total?
I'm sorry. Can you?
So when we budgeted, so we had a budget,
Yep.
and we said, okay, it's $1 million, whatever it, so, and then we said, okay, 15% is going to be for the materials.
Yeah.
So then when we actually spend, if we end up a little bit higher than that $1 million, then is the 15% of that final total spend number, or the budgeted amount?
It's the 15. I think I understand what you're saying. It's the 15% of what the original
That's what I think.
original library
Because I
budget was
don't
meant to
see
be.
how you could, it'd be
Right.
very difficult.
Right, because then
some
it's
of
a
the-
moving
there
target
could be
that you'll
some
never
maintenance
hit.
that puts you
Yes.
over the budget. And,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
So, right. So, the budget for that year was like 1.2, and so 15% of it was about 166,000 that we were meant to
Okay,
spend.
so you're just looking at that number?
That's all we're
it.
required to spend.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
And then one more question I had was, and I know we have a packed agenda, I'll try to make this quick. But is this, when things are on back order, and I'm not sure if there's things that are typically that we find on back order, is this a supply chain issue or is this a vendor issue? or a bit of,
So it's an industry issue right now that
Okay.
vendors are particularly strapped. One vendor which we don't use was having some problems supplying, and the scramble made a lot of libraries go to the other vendor, Ingram, which is where we primarily get our books from, and so that caused a supply issue for them. They were well aware of that and very transparent about it, and so they let us know back in about January. They actually let us know to order in advance, so order about 3 months out, which is not what we usually do, and not preferable for what we do either, because we're trying to monitor things on a regular basis. But we were aware of that, and so we actually stopped ordering. We stopped placing the larger orders for the certain departments, like the adult nonfiction, adult fiction, children's room. All those orders were stopped as of May 1st. It was actually.
Okay.
Now it went a little bit beyond that, but basically all of our orders were in at that point. So we had a pretty good idea of what was going to be, where we were going to be for the budget. But then that still doesn't figure in exactly when they're going to be arriving. I'm getting emails daily from Ingram saying, "Hey, your shipment's on the way." Wonderful. It could be 2 books. It could be 15 books. So, yeah. Yeah.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Tom, for those updates.
Okay. You're in a good place, so.
All right, moving on to next business is the walkabout by Chris.
Did Carrie have a friends update?
Oh, thank you. Friends update by Carrie. So Carrie is our trustee representative or liaison with the Friends. So give a Friends update.
Yeah, thank you. So the Friends had their annual meeting last week on Wednesday, so it was actually after our special meeting. And thank you to Aaron and Doug for attending. There are so the Friends when they have their annual meeting, typically it's in June of each year, and they hold elections for the board members. Our current president and vice president, who are just wonderful, Marion Brayer and Betsy Weldon, are unfortunately planning to move out of town, so we're very sad that they're going to be departing the board. They're still staying on as board members until they actually do move. So Jackie Dillman actually stepped up and is going to be serving as the president, and she's wonderful as well. So we're very happy about that. They are planning to do a back to school book sale as they usually do, and typically what happens with that is there's a call a week before the book sale for donations. The conference room A and B are blocked off, and it's very efficient because books are dropped off, they're sorted into the different tables, and then we're ready for the sale on that Saturday and Sunday as well. So, and the Friends typically contribute between $8,000 and $10,000 a year, and they're planning to do that again this year, which is wonderful. They do have the ongoing book sale as well throughout the year, and that's been doing very well. So it's been well stocked, and they're finding that their new policy of accepting donations the first Friday and then the next Saturday of the month has been working very well. So they're planning to continue to do that as well. So yeah, so.
What kind of books? And when does this happen? The donation, the book sale.
So the Friends take all types of donations. They ask that the condition be reasonable condition of the books. Like if it's falling apart, just please dispose of it. But if it's gently used, or some books, I would swear they get dropped off. I would swear somebody just went to the bookstore, bought it, and dropped it off. They're in such wonderful condition. They also accept things like games, puzzles, DVDs, and that type of material. So it could range. It could be adult material. It could be adult, children, teen, anywhere in between. So it's a very wide range of materials that they accept, and that's the primary money maker for the Friends, is basically the community donating the books, and then the Friends selling the books, at a very discounted price, to the community. So it's kind of a recycling and fundraiser activity all in one.
And when does that happen?
So the books are collected throughout the year, on the first Friday of the month in that following Saturday. So and then they usually have one or two large book sales. Typically there's called the back to school book sale, and then that's at the end of August. So in the month, this coming August, instead of collecting on the Friday and the Saturday at the beginning of the month, they're going to ask people to just hold on a couple more weeks, and then the middle of August, make the donations, and then get set up, because it's a very, very big effort to set up. A lot of us volunteer to help, but then there's also Friends members. We have assistance from Boy Scouts and for National Honor Society members as well. So. But I don't know if I answered your question. If you're, yeah.
May I add something about Friends membership? Right. So the Friends bring in, I want to say, about $1,500 from membership dues a year, and some of those range from people just wanting to donate more money than the standard membership fee. But we as trustees, whereas they're supporting the library, right? They're our fundraising arm. We don't raise money for the library, and neither does the staff really can't do fundraising, so only the Friends can, and that's how we're able to fund things like museum passes and whatnot. So our contribution to support the Friends is to become Friends members, and also so that we can attend their meetings. So it's difficult sometimes to make sure, like, I don't know if my membership, because it's an annual membership. So what we try to do as a trustee board is, I want to say around December and January time frame, we kind of re-up together, and I think it's $25 for a family, $10 for an individual.
There's some very reasonable levels, and then there's also more generous levels too. So
Yeah. So that way I never have to think about, am I still a Friends member? And it's sometimes hard to track them down to ask.
I tend to do it around annual meetings, so that's a time too. And then they do send out mailings as well to remind former members.
They take PayPal, so I usually pay on PayPal because I can always look back in my history on PayPal when I last paid.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Right, but they won't send you a
will
membership
not.
mailing because they don't have your address.
Which came
Sure.
up at the meeting last
Yep.
at the Friends annual meeting.
Thank you.
So
all right. Thank you, Carrie. Okay, so next, so one of the responsibilities that we've taken up as a board is what we call the walkabout, and we have trustees that go through either the outside of the building or the inside of the building, just kind of walk around and see if there's any, issues that, cracked windows, I guess whatever. And Chris has been doing it for the past couple of months.
I think past year.
Past year, sorry, that's what I meant.
But
to say.
yeah, so I sent out an email that had a bunch of those items. I think Kim also got them into the revised packet, which came out earlier. But essentially, start at the top and go on down. The garden beds had what I'm assuming are a bunch of animal holes, but they were fairly larger than I'm used to seeing around my own home. Probably not of any concern, but something to kind of keep an eye on, because there were a significant number of them. There were 0 last time I went through, so that was a little surprising. Have not seen them other years or other months. The front door to the old building still has the wasp nest and the light. And what I thought was last week was actually sealing, like repair, like stucco or compound. Actually, I think is actually some other kind of wasp or bee that is different than kind of your standard nest. So it's probably something that we want to have looked at. There's one on either side of the light as well. I don't know if any of them are active. There wasn't huge amounts of activity, but at least get them looked at. As I walked around behind the building, there's the children's amphitheater, if no one knows, kind of in that back corner on the southwest, I guess, sort of, near the common. There's a back entrance door where there was a bunch of scaffolding, a couple months ago. I was looking there because there's a bunch of leaves, and the downspout that's there is, the copper is kind of completely crushed. And it's totally packed with leaves on the bottom as well. So that's not the area that we've had flooding recently. but I think is something to keep an eye on. There was one small brick kind of starting to come loose kind of near the front entrance. Both EV chargers did appear to be down, and it said,
That was this afternoon?
Yes, this was today.
Because I could have sworn I saw people charging on.
so, and it was
Saturday.
also not working last weekend when I went to charge with the same message.
Is that something, Tom, I don't know if you know, but is that something that the company that installs those monitors and will come out and repair, or do we need to notify them
We make them aware of it, and they usually can fix it
remotely?
remotely.
Remotely.
Actually.
Okay.
So I just need to know when that happens.
Yeah. Did you notice that it was out all that time? Because I really was pretty sure I saw somebody in between those two times.
So I don't know in between Sunday and today,
Yeah.
but there were no cars either point when I went, and couldn't get it to start on Sunday. I didn't bring my car today.
Okay.
For the community room tier, these are things that we've noted before, but I don't actually know if they ever made it on the punch list. There's some bubbled paint kind of near the back server racks, and a couple damaged water tiles, nothing overly major. There's a hanging sensor in the large meeting room, just kind of adjacent to the circulation office, kind of in the center light fixture, or what appears to be a sensor anyway of some kind. And then Tom already talked about the HVAC, so there's a little bit of detail here, but probably not too much else. The one thing that I was surprised about, and we've seen, John and I have historically seen some discrepancies here, is there was one thermostat right near that second floor circulation desk that was reading 59. The wall at the top of the stairs was reading 76. So we've noticed some discrepancies before, but nothing on that order. I don't know if that's a common occurrence. You may know more.
It is a common occurrence,
Yeah,
and
so-
I recently made the comment to Kim that walking around the library is like swimming in the ocean.
Yep.
Where like there's sometimes when it's like, ooh, that's a real cold current there, and then you swim on and you sense something a lot warmer.
Yeah.
And it sometimes feels like that walking around the library.
So I did not notice a 17-degree difference between the two locations that
Yeah.
were 15 feet apart,
Yeah.
but something maybe to look at as part of that.
And I think again, it goes back to the overall.
Right, that's something I think Chris and I can keep an eye on when we're discussing the HVAC stuff.
Yep. So that was the extent of it. And Kim has those pictures and stuff associated with those as well.
All right, well, thank you, Chris, for doing that. And these will routinely make it onto the punch list, is that right, Kim? You typically review these? and-
Yep, I just got them today, so with anything new will get added, and I will also add and update the pictures that Chris shared with me.
Yep.
Much of that is on there. There might be a couple of things that need to be.
And so Tom, are there some of these, like the wasps, the downspouts, that are custodian can take?
The maintenance crew? Yeah, I mean, we can.
Like, do you
Find
routinely,
out.
routinely get a list of stuff that they?
When I know about these, I will often mention them. There
Yeah,
are things
okay.
like that are issues that I just mention to our maintenance people.
Yep.
And they'll usually take care of them, depending. The wasps up in the light might be a little.
It's a
little
pretty
tricky.
high.
Yeah,
It's pretty high
it
up.
might be a little tricky.
Yep.
But I can certainly see if that's within their realm. And
Sounds
they're
great.
Willing to take that on.
Did
I
it
mean-
look a lot bigger? Because I know like wasp nests can grow very quickly.
Yeah.
Not too much. Looked complete last week, and this week it looked the same. John and I had noticed one last fall. It has not looked overly active, but I didn't hang out for half an hour to really notice. But I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Chris on the walkabout? All right.
Doug, you keep taking all my questions, so I'm glad we're in sync tonight.
Okay.
So good job.
Sounds good. I will move to new business. First is the library director search, which is me. So we met last week. We came up with a bunch of action items to address. I think the key ones are that Rachel and Chris volunteered to meet with Tom just to get some feedback from him on things that went well, things that didn't go well, things that we can improve on, as trustees. So I did see an email that you guys are working to schedule that, so thank you. We approved the interim director position, so I need to send that off to the town administrator so they can go ahead and post that interim director position. The third piece is working on the permanent library director job description. So that was in your packet. We discussed that last week at our last week meeting, And I think there are only a few, like content changes. There were some, with Kim's help, we maybe made it a little bit more readable, but there were really only 3 or 4, I guess, significant changes. The first of which was mentioning the staff number. We, in the original post, it just said something like, they manage staff, is just one of their responsibilities. In here, we actually listed the numbers. That's at the end, right, Kim, of this packet?
Yes. at the
Page
end.
48,
Yeah,
What was in the new
thank you.
packet?
There's the red line version.
yeah, but page 48 has the numbers, 11 full-time, 11
Yeah.
part-time. and
Yeah, here
5
we go,
part-time.
at the top. So manages a professional unionized staff comprising of 11 full-time, 11 part-time, and 5 on-call staff members. So we added that. We added to advises, consults, and collaborates with the trustees. We mentioned that they are to attend monthly board meetings. In the annual operating budget, it was suggested that we add in the actual dollar amount to give them the size, the scale of the budget. So we added in approximately $1.2 million. And I think that was the only significant change. I think one somewhat open item, and I don't know if we can decide that tonight or we need to work with the town administrator, is the salary range. So the original post was 70 to 77. And then it was adjusted to 70,000 to 87.5, and of course that's based on, dependent on qualifications and experience. So I think my one question to the board is: are we comfortable with that salary range?
Did that number come from anywhere in particular? Is it, because I know that there are services where you can actually get, fair market.
So when we did this a year and a half ago, there
Yeah.
was a little bit of a market research. We looked at
Okay.
neighboring towns. We looked at other town positions, with similar, like the recreation director, recreation department director, to try to come up with a range, but also to look at the size and scope of the library
Sure.
itself, because it's a somewhat unique position in the town, considering they have a lot of different responsibilities, including the building maintenance. Of course, managing the staff, the budget, and all
Okay.
that stuff.
I would mention that I don't have the town's classification plan with me, but that number, I think, fell in line with the step rate. And so it was a range that acknowledged that the top tier of that wasn't starting out too close to the maximum salary, which brings me to your point in our last meeting, where although I mentioned different salaries that were posted for directors of towns of even smaller size that exceeded that, all things being equal to a 35-hour week, you had mentioned, Doug, that you had also were in the process of or had already inquired about what other department heads earn. And I say that in the context of that range, the lower end of that range for the amount of work that a director does for a town this size, and circulation, staff, and budget is low. All right. And so I don't know if you got anywhere with that discussion, as far as maybe other department heads not necessarily being constrained by that. I don't know if they're constrained by that classification plan, or there are certain department heads that fall outside of certain categories that are constrained by the classification plan. But I think there are certain numbers that are competitive and certain numbers that are not, as far as salary range.
Yep.
So
Just for reference, and the public salary, right? The salary of town employees is public information. So through a search, I found that at least based on the search, the senior center director salary was around 91, and the recreational department was around 93. So definitely both of those are above this current range.
And those would have been the same step classification that you were mentioning?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But those are two positions in town that I saw manages a staff. You know, they have a budget. They have a group of community, right? They have seniors that come in there and they're servicing a group of people.
Are those also?
I think one more last thing is one of the challenges, of course, is it's also dependent on your tenure in town. So if someone's been in a position for a long time, they might have progressed along and maybe are at the higher end of the
Right,
salary
right.
range. Yeah,
I
Rachel?
was just curious if those were 40-hour-a-week positions versus the 35,
That's a good question.
because that might be some of the difference too. So
Yep, good question.
I think when we looked at that, and William Blake was with us, he said that that's generally how these town positions are posted. Even William Blake's was 35-hour a week. He doesn't work 35 hours a week, right? That's just how the town positions are posted. So I'm sure theirs are probably the same, the recreation.
I would think so too.
perfect, as long as there's a line, because I was like, that might be
Yeah, that small difference.
discrepancy. So.
Yep.
So maybe weird question, that are we expecting more than 35 hours per week? Because I guess that,
I
can we
don't think
change
we
that?
can, right? I think that's what we found out from the last search,
So-
is that's just the town, it's 35-hour week.
Okay.
Can I ask?
Now, this is a, right, and in the job description and the more detailed job description, there are activities outside normal library hours, like this meeting itself, maybe some town events, night meetings, weekend events. So there is in the job description that the director may be, working outside those hours.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we know where other library positions listed at 35 hours? Like, well, that's what the town does, right? Like, I'm just curious, is that how other libraries are posted too? I just want to make sure, like, if you're in the library field, like did you expect actually 35 hours?
I would ask maybe Tom if he knows.
Yeah, I'm
It-
just curious.
Everything in the library field can be answered with the phrase, it depends.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
Yep.
And so they range from 35 to 40.
Okay.
So most being 35 to 37 and a half,
Okay.
Yep. Which is just a number. I have yet to work 35 hours
Yeah, no, I feel
over the
you.
past year.
Well,
So,
and I feel like it's common if it's 40 that you acknowledge you work over that. So that's why the 35, like coming from the outside, seemed a little off. But
Yeah.
that's
yeah,
common and
it's
known.
it's the normal range. Yeah.
So in the last meeting, I know we are discussing the permanent position. The last meeting, we talked about not much of a difference between the permanent position, job description versus the interim position, with the qualification for the interim role being that this is going to be subject to hiring of the permanent position,
Yes.
right? So
yes,
the job
it's a short
description-
term.
Yeah, short term, and the same person can be eligible for applying for the permanent position also, right?
I thought I heard that was not the case. That the short, because it's like an unfair advantage, right? They could be considered for the permanent, but that,
I thought
I
we
thought that
talked
was-
about that and we were okay with
Yeah.
like we did discuss it, but I thought we were all okay because it gives us more insight into the person.
By,
I'd have to reconfirm with the town administrator, because I thought I remember William saying something about that was not the case. The interim was like a consultant that comes in, and not necessarily that would be
Okay, because that's something we really want to consider.
when we do the search, of course.
Yeah.
And I had brought it up at our last meeting only because of my familiarity with the select board, having been in this situation in recent years, where they made it perfectly clear that that person that was interim would not be eligible. But I didn't know whether that was a sort of statutory requirement or whether that was just the way they had historically done things. But to Carrie's point, I would want to make sure that we're not going down a path that we shouldn't.
Right, I mean, I don't think that's
Retired.
important for the decision on the posting itself, but it's certainly important when we start considering candidates.
Right.
Yep, okay.
but the content could still be the same, right? The job description, bullet point, everything would still be the same between the permanent position versus.
Correct.
You're on the microphone.
Oh, is that what it is?
But yes, yes.
But I'm wondering.
And I think, sorry, just one.
I'm sorry.
The interim director is typically, I think, a posting that goes to MBLC because MBLC manages the listserver where most of those people will look for the job position. And so it comes through that source. I mean, it doesn't have to, but I think that's where most of the candidates will come in. Or it's a consultant that MBLC has a list of and says like, look, you can hire this person or this person.
But I Mr. Chair, I think it is pertinent that we take that into consideration on the interim posting, because if there's one of the department heads, master's level department heads within the library that would want to be, looked upon for consideration of the interim, that may be a deciding factor of that individual stepping into that role. If they're precluded from the permanent position, that may influence their decision to go after the interim in the first place.
Yeah, I don't think that is applicable if we post and then we hire somebody, a staff member would have to step out of they basically have to resign from their position, I think, to then become an interim director.
They'd have to step away from the union.
The union,
because
right, that's
we were in charge of the
So I-
non-union.
But then,
I think that was an unlikely scenario. I mean, it might be something where if we don't have any candidates for an interim director, and then we want to give some of that responsibility to a staff member and pay him a stipend or whatever.
Okay.
I think that's a possibility, but
Okay.
I don't think if they apply to it outside of it, they would have to resign. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if Kim, I mean, if I'm not sure. Okay.
Okay.
I think we really need to get clarification on that.
Do we think that impacts the actual posting itself or just the search when we start looking for the search? Right? To me, it seems like it's important to get the posting, the interim and then the permanent posting out there and be comfortable with the language of the posting.
I would agree with that. Let's
Okay.
get the posting out.
Yeah. So given the red line and the version that Kim sent out and just reviewing, are we comfortable with the current description and then that range of 70 to 87.5?
I had a couple questions on the posting.
Yep.
When we talked last week, I think we had talked about mentioning in like the main part of the posting about like the maintenance piece too, like there, and so I was just having a chance to read it and I didn't see it, but let me know if I missed that, because like I said, I'm just seeing it now. I was traveling today. So I just
Yeah,
wanna make
there
sure
is
that-
a, well, let me double check. I mean, certainly the qualifications is library management.
Yeah, I think we talked about that like top responsibility piece, just supporting the maintenance and quality.
Yeah, I mean, I think there just says in the qualifications, proven experience in library management, including budgeting, staff supervision, and strategic planning.
Yeah, and I don't know if we'd want to put something like I said, it feels like Tom spent a lot of time on HVAC and building maintenance, and that's a lot of what we talk about here. So just being transparent that's appears to be a significant part of the
Right.
job.
And we did talk about that in the last
Yeah.
meeting to
We
add
did.
line item.
Yeah, so I would just want,
But, and I thought you also had that and Doug, you were referring back to the detail.
It's definitely in the
the
detailed
detail,
description, right, but if we feel like it's important to get in this one pager, then we should add that in.
yeah, I think so.
Do you want to propose some verbiage?
That's not my strength.
Yeah. I mean, we could just say, responsible for building maintenance. I mean, I don't know how generic you want to get.
Responsible for ensuring continued building maintenance occurs. Okay. Or coordination, maybe
I-
coordination. I don't know.
if
How
I
would you say,
may,
Tom? Yeah.
I think management would be better than maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Building.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oversight, not responsible.
So building,
Yeah.
Right.
We don't
right.
expect you there with a hammer, so.
Maintenance implies certain things that are included in this, but I think management is a softer way of saying it.
Oversight
Yeah.
of building management.
Yeah.
Yes, but
Yeah.
well,
But it also encompasses the other elements that go along with it.
Yeah, so really, building maintenance and upkeep is really under the purview of the Board of Library Trustees. So I might almost want to say, in conjunction with the Board of Library Trustees, overseeing, what did you call it, building management? Yeah.
Yeah. So what would be the word, in
I think
consultation?
conjunction,
In
if you want,
conjunction?
if you want a better word, find one.
So in conjunction with the trustees, manages building maintenance and upkeep,
Oversight
Well,
of building
yeah,
management.
don't say
Building,
oversight,
of building management, we'll not say main.
Great.
But the director is kind of the day-to-day, has day-to-day responsibility, or we have, we're kind of.
Yep, so in conjunction with the library trustees, oversight of building maintenance and upkeep.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to,
Sorry, I had one more question. I didn't mean
oh
to
yeah,
dig.
of course.
The other thing we had left the last call with was that we were gonna have Tom take a peek at it and see if anything seemed to be missing. I didn't know if Tom had a chance to see the posting and let us know if there seemed like there was any gaps in the job description from what you found you were doing.
I can certainly do that. Yeah. Maybe you want to do that.
So how do we,
Yeah, that might be
I didn't
then
mean
we
to,
can't
like,
approve it
stop
tonight
it,
then, yeah.
Right.
I'm
You have
wondering,
it- I mean, you have it right there?
Yeah.
Do you have it written up?
Redlined, yeah.
Here, do you want this stuff?
Yeah,
And then there was the additional bullet point. Yep.
I said management, so there's one.
There you go.
so I guess, I would say, Mr. Chair, that,
I think it's just the next one.
as much as I respect our director's opinion on this, we're also under kind of a tight time frame. I think we could end up beating a dead horse sometimes.
yeah, and I think the detail, oh, sorry.
No, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I agree. I mean, I don't think, I do agree with you, Roger, because of the level of detail in the detailed job description. I think this current
Yeah.
one pager
And
is
I think
good.
also too, when we're in the interview process, we can express that too to the candidates, that that is a significant portion as well. Like we certainly don't want to hide it.
I think Tom would agree that when you read the full job description, you are fully aware of the scope of the position, because it's
Yeah.
like 3 pages. Okay, so given the change that, oh, sorry, Rachel, did you have any other comments?
No,
or
that's
anybody
okay.
else?
I just was curious, like,
Yep.
where that had landed based on our last conversation, so.
So do I have a motion to accept the library director posting as amended with the building maintenance
Um,
sentence?
I make a motion to accept the library posting as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
The maintenance, we talked about management, building management.
Oversight of building maintenance and upkeep was what I wrote down.
Right. So instead of maintenance, we talked about,
Building
multiple
management.
times over,
Okay.
calling that as building management.
Okay.
So does it matter whether we're using the word oversight or management? I mean, is
In
that,
conjunction with the bold, oversight of building management.
Not the word maintenance.
Not the word of maintenance, sorry.
Gotcha.
I think I did
Okay.
hear that. You
Okay,
guys did say
yeah.
that. I just wrote it down wrong. Okay,
oh, thank you.
thank you, because I wrote it over there too. All right, if there's no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I declare the motion carried. So thank you for that. I think that's gonna be certainly the big step to get that posted.
Did you think it was
And
okay?
it looks fine. Looks great, yeah. So I wouldn't have, didn't need to postpone that one.
Thank you.
Wait,
Okay,
wait.
so moving
Now
on.
that you've approved it.
Moving on to the next order of new business is the Children's Room Grand Reopening Celebration. That was last Saturday, spring into summer. Do you have an update on that, Tom?
Very well. There were the official count is 706.
700?
Yes.
It was, yeah.
That is incredible.
This is throughout the day.
Throughout the day, right, right. We were,
Still,
All in one room.
now, people didn't show up and stay the whole day, but over the course of the day, we had staff clicking the numbers, and it was 700 plus. So wonderful turnout, perfect weather for it, and everything seemed to go relatively smoothly. And so great time had by all. reports I've gotten from the staff is that they had lines, like at the face painting and the balloon twisting. They literally had to turn people away because they had so many people, and it was just overwhelmed.
That's awesome.
So,
Do we expect to see pictures?
I'm sure there are pictures around.
I got a bunch of
Happen to know
pictures.
Yeah,
There
because
was a-
unfortunately I was out of town.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
There's
So
a member
pictures-
of the press who came as well, from the Grafton News, so she was
Yep.
taking pictures
great.
as well.
We
So
did
hopefully
promote
we
it
get some
there as
good
well. Yep.
publicity.
So
Well, I'm sorry I didn't make it, but certainly a big thanks to the staff that planned that,
Yeah,
because I'm
great
sure that was a
staff.
pretty big planning event
Yeah.
to plan.
So I will say that the head of the children's room, Sarah, was fantastic in putting all this together and keeping it coordinated. As with so many things with this library, there are a lot of moving parts, as we said earlier, and certainly coordinating everything, plus having a rain date just in case. There's a lot to coordinate and organize. So definitely kudos to her for getting all that together and having it run so smoothly.
Great.
And
Any other comments from trustees?
Yeah, Aaron, Carrie, and myself had attended. I staffed the bouncy house obstacle course. That was a hit, and I kind of was a little bit generous on the age range of 6 and above. There were some pretty athletic 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds here, and that was a real hit. But I was it was great weather, and I was very particularly impressed by the fact that I had shown up at 9 to help, and everything was like done, and so
That's great.
and so you know, the library staff did an amazing job at really organizing and keeping that day going, and countless people came up to me saying, you know, really thank you for, you know, having this. And it really was great that it coincided with Big Truck Day. There were a lot of people who went to Big Truck Day and then came to the Common, to the library event. And so the feedback was tremendous. So, and people ask, can you do this every year? Can you,
Well, that's what I was just thinking. I'm like, this sounds like a great summer.
you know,
kickoff.
and I think, yeah, I think the price tag was, I don't know, $4,000 or something. I don't know, but we can talk about that some other time. But the feedback was, yeah, you got to keep this thing going, you know.
Great.
So I will say that a great opportunity for outreach to talk to the parents for trustees. So if you know, whenever there's an opportunity like this, that's really part of our job is to do outreach, right?
Yeah.
We do, you know, walkabouts, we do policies, you know, and we oversee, you know, the trust. But our job is to do outreach, and I love that part of the job. And one of the things I heard from just someone, you know, wasn't talking to them directly, but they were talking to one of their friends, and they said, you know, this is great because I would just taking a walk, and here it is, and I came over, and this is a lot of fun, right? So, and you know, to kind of echo what you had said about the staff setup, right? And it was all kind of set up. They were very efficient and very attentive, and really just every time I tried to lend a hand, it was like it was already getting done.
Yeah.
And even the breakdown too. So so they really did a fantastic job, and the smiles on the staff face, and one staff member said, you know, this really fills my bucket, which was really fantastic. And I said, okay, this is great. So we have to determine if we want to fund it again next year or something similar.
Yeah, I think it was fantastic. I would definitely be in favor of that.
Oh, and 100 years is in 2027
Yeah.
of the library.
That's
So
right.
we should
So-
at least do something in 2027.
One question for you, Tom. Do you know, in terms of I think you said 706. Do you know how that compares to other events, say, in the last year since you've been here? Is that one of the largest? Is that the largest? How does
So
that compare?
I think the trick or treating is the
The
largest.
Halloween.
Okay.
That's the one that was.
But that's like a stop through. This is people
But that
staying
right,
for
but, right,
quite some
and
time.
right, and that's a great point. So for an actual library exclusive event, this was well and above everything else.
Because I'd be curious to know what the cost per visit is. You know, clearly
Yeah.
the Halloween
Yeah.
one is kind of we're piggybacking on other things.
Right.
Because
right.
it may be that as expensive as it may be in a single ticket item, it may be that we actually get more bang for our buck. Or not. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, I
but it
think
might
so.
be a good one.
I think so.
So
Yep.
And do we keep tab of how many of these 706 are from Grafton? How many come from neighboring towns?
No, it was really just somebody clicking,
Okay.
just somebody keeping track of. Though I do know anecdotally that that staff were interacting with people, and a lot of people were saying, I'm not even a Grafton resident. I'm coming from another town, which I like, because we are getting a reputation in the region of being the go-to library. So, as much as we love our Grafton residents, it's nice to that outreach. So,
Yeah.
and also just people who weren't regular library users. This was promoted heavily leading up to it by the children's room staff to everybody who was coming in for whatever event or just visit. But this also reached people who are not the normal library users, which is, I think particularly important.
Oh, excellent. That's really exciting. I wish I didn't miss it, but it's great. Thank you. Any other questions, comments about the spring into summer event?
Just another comment. So I think there was like a nice mix of like definitely tons of Grafton residents, also folks from other communities as well. I got some good feedback from people who just expressed their appreciation for the 9:30 a.m. story time. How well that really works for them. So I did get a lot of feedback from that. But
Great.
of course, this is the type of crowd that is
Right,
going to
right.
appreciate that.
It's
But
the choir, but
yeah.
it's nice to have a choir.
Yeah. And then there were some people who weren't aware of that, so we were
Yeah.
able to share, that information with them. So, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's an uptick, the following week in, story hour attendees. So.
Yep. And one nice element was that through the generosity of the board approving this, we agreed to have the full library, full children's room staff there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that we had people covering the children's room, because it was kind of slow then, because everybody was over in the common, and so the children's room staff were available to mingle and meet and greet, which was really nice.
All right. Thanks for the update. Moving on in the agenda, the next one is use of Zoom for hybrid virtual participation by Prabhu.
So, my introduction and onboarding in the very first meeting, I saw that 2 members could not make it, join the meeting because we didn't have the Zoom capability. With 2 things as part of the conversation and the proposal is, one is the governor has signed off, approved having virtual attendance for town meetings, right, till 27, I believe, some 2 years extension. Second one, life happens. All of us have lives beyond this, so we travel once a month. Why would we not leverage the Zoom capabilities that's already available? If we are not going to be in person, at least we can join in remote. So, and many other, I think most of the other committees and boards are already leveraging Zoom capability. For the planning board meetings, for 2 terms that I was there, I leveraged that heavily. That's the only way I could participate with my employment demanding that I need to travel 3 weeks a month.
I think last week too, at least from being a Zoom participant, it worked really well. I had to be in DC, right? And it was obviously a really important conversation. And at least from the virtual standpoint, I think it worked well. I guess feedback from people in the room, and I know you were also remote too. So,
Yeah.
but I was just curious, did it?
I think the Zoom is a great idea for. I think I would favor that if you're in town that you come in person. I would certainly have in person as the default, but like you said, if you're out of town on business, in the past, if I'm out of, because it just happens to always fall on that specific day. I think it's a great option.
Yeah.
It was a little, for me, it was like, right, because we had a screen there and a screen there, and the rest of the group was a little like a Mr. Raise Your Hand, but I think those are minor
We'll get used to it.
minor issues. Yeah, I get used to it.
May I?
Yeah, Aaron.
So I'm glad you mentioned it that way, right? So we do have, and this is maybe an antiquated policy, the option to dial in, right? If you can't make a meeting, the Zoom thing is really just because the governor said we can do Zoom until for another year or so, but it was about to expire in April, right? And they extended it. So we were on Zoom fully for like 4 years, and I happened to be the chair during that time, and I think we need to be cautious when if we're deciding that if somebody wants to opt just to be on Zoom, like being in this room is very difficult, right? Like you said, to do hybrid meetings. I think it was okay where we were at the library doing a hybrid meeting, but I just want to say in a very general way, if we ever opt as a board to do Zoom meetings, because I know Zoom meetings are very common. People are used to doing Zoom meetings and working remotely for their jobs, right? I found them to be very invasive, right? In my home, especially around kids going to bed, during the school year, and you're kind of locked in your room and you got, noises from the other room and stuff, because I know that our previous director also had some noise and stuff when they were joining Zoom and whatnot. But for hybrid, I mean, we'd have to try to figure out how to make it work in this room.
Yeah, so actually I did talk to Bob, and he said it's perfectly capable. I can't really see Bill in there, right? That was Bill. But Bob said that it's certainly capable here. We just would have to give the Zoom login information to whoever's back there, and they would just connect to Zoom.
So would we see them projected on the screen?
Yes.
here?
Oh,
Because
I
you're right,
think-
in that library room, we had that nice screen on the side, and
I
then-
think you would see the Zoom on these screens here.
and
Yeah,
then kinda
so
see it,
like
on the
select board
side,
and
so
planning
The
board
planning
too.
board, it always happens.
Is that
So
what it
you'll
is?
see the presentation screen, you'll see all the participants, and then if you're on a phone or on your own personal laptop, you can always swipe the screen to highlight the speaker at any point of time, just besides the content.
Yeah.
I do agree with one piece in terms of invasiveness. There is always the Zoom bombing. So in the planning board for 6 years, it happened twice. Zoom bombing. So as soon as you know that, okay, someone is bombing it, whoever is controlling the meeting can eliminate that particular participant. So you just need to be aware of these things, and there are etiquettes that we would need to adopt and make sure that if you are joining in from a place, just don't sit in the middle of Manhattan joining a meeting with everything zooming around.
Yeah. So may I propose something? Not a what do you call it?
Motion?
Motion. Thank you. Propose that if you're unable to attend a meeting in person, you let the chair know, right, that you'd like to participate remotely. That way, we don't always have to have a Zoom meeting available every week, right?
I think
I think you'd have to set it up ahead of time, because
it'd have to be on the agenda. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, if we know a week in advance when we're posting the agenda that everyone's going to be in person, then we don't have to add it to the agenda. Or is that going to be too confusing?
My recommendation is we
Yeah.
add a Zoom link if there are people besides the board of trustees who want to participate and they are interested. This gives them the option to at least dial in.
Yeah.
That happens for the other board meeting.
It's hard, right? Because the Zoom link is really, you're saying that we're meeting via Zoom, so then we have to meet via Zoom because it's on the agenda and
Right.
how the public can join, right? So you're going to have a lot of people from town who may just want to jump on Zoom. And we've had, I don't want to say, I'll say we've had some issues where people take things out of context and post images of things on Facebook and take things out of context. And I guess they could do that by snapshotting, our public
The video.
meetings and stuff. But I've not had a good experience with this board on Zoom. So that's just my opinion.
I would say I do, having no previous experience there with this board specifically, I think the concept of the public being able to join on Zoom, especially as we talk about things like the children's rooms and things like that, and you may have to be home with your kids while they're sleeping or something and still be able to contribute. Although it can have its own challenges, right? By opening up to the public in that forum. I'd be curious to see how much that risk
Sure.
continues.
So if I may add,
Yeah.
I'll go back to the planning board. this board joins in with as an panelist access. Every other member joins in as only participant. They cannot join in
Right.
till the chair says that, yes, I allow them to be brought on board as a panelist. They can join in to listen in and view. That doesn't knock off the piece that they can take screenshots or whatnot and stuff. But they cannot just bump in and start speaking midway during the meeting. That's only the panelists. So there are two levels of access. There is the participants who are almost like a read-only access, and then the panelists who are the members on this board, plus others.
And my 2 cents is what Aaron had mentioned, and we had spoken about this in prior meetings about certain, sometimes decorum gets thrown out the window, and there's a certain amount of informality that can somehow creep into the participants or the panelists' participation. And I think we just need to be mindful of that if we do have a Zoom, entirely Zoom or a hybrid meeting, that your points in prior meetings, Aaron, have been well taken, that I've noticed there's sometimes the Zoom participation can be disruptive, and there's a certain amount of informality that sometimes creeps into the meetings that shouldn't. And so, to the extent that I can make an in-person meeting, even if I could jump on Zoom, I would absolutely, unless I was traveling or something, I would actually physically be here. So.
Yeah, I would expect that even if we do go ahead with this hybrid option, is that if you're in town, you're in this meeting, it's more of those people that are out of town or something.
Or, yes.
And, at least historically, I think the number of public that would join our Zoom meeting when we were Zoom was extremely low. And like you said, if they come in as, I guess, I don't know, what did you say? They're not panelists, they're viewers.
Yeah, guess.
Guests or whatever. Like, they're not going to be able to interrupt us. It would only be when we open it up to the public at the end of the agenda.
So is this?
So I think this, since it's a kind of a decision, individual decision, it seems like it is something that we want to do a motion and vote on.
Can I make one?
Well,
One
is
more
this a
comment.
policy
Oh, yeah.
subcommittee thing that needs to go to the main I mean, it seems, we have library trustees policies. This would appear to be under a policy that we would probably want to be consistent with vetting it through the policy subcommittee, unless I'm missing something. And sorry to.
No, it's okay.
All right.
I guess just to respond to your policy comment, I guess the question is if there was a policy about it during COVID.
We did have a.
Yeah.
But I don't think the trustees had a separate
That's
COVID
kind of-
policy. It was just the state's policy.
Well, and that's kind of what I
Open
mean, is
meeting
that
allowed.
if we ran for 4 years without a trustees policy, I don't know that it seems like it isn't necessary now. At least would be my thought. I don't know if that's actually true, but that would be my sense of it.
And, I don't see an issue where we could try this out for a couple of months. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, then we can just go back to the
All right.
And that
only in
was
person.
that was gonna be that was exactly my comment, was that, let's try it out for 6 months, see what happens. There are a lot of good practices in terms of raising hands. We can have one person that is monitoring the hybrid or virtual participants. That's pretty standard when you have hybrid meetings. There's a bunch of others. It's not that it's not new and not added work, but I think we can at least give it a good shot. And there's at least a handful of times when I could have been here that either for work or home by myself with kids while my wife is traveling, that I could have been present that I was not. I think it would be, I think it'd be really valuable, at least to try.
Mr. Chair, I move that this board commence hybrid meetings, starting with our next meeting.
Second.
All right, so moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you did bring up a good point, right? Childcare. So if, you need to be home, because you mentioned if you're in town, you should be able to come in, but you're in town, but you have to watch your kids. Is that an appropriate use of Zoom? That we didn't consider that before. Because
I think as long as they
I know
don't-
previous trustees had trouble coming to these meetings. We had one trustee
Right.
that never came to the meetings because they had many kids to account for it. I say many kids, but you know, but yeah, I mean, we saw that trustee maybe once or twice, and maybe, you know, having Zoom would have been great, but then I felt like the Zoom etiquette wasn't very good on that particular trustee's, you know, when they were part of Zoom, right? So, you know, I will say that, but like if you are at home for, you know, childcare purposes, okay, we'll allow Zoom, but it really has to be, you know, are you watching your kids or are you joining a meeting? Granted, if you have older kids, fine, but still.
If you have younger kids, we meet at 7, that could be past their bedtime, so they,
Right.
you know, you need to be home, but they're asleep.
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
my kids.
And that's why I didn't come to the meeting on Tuesday, is I was home by myself with my kids. So I think also we need to be careful not being overly prescriptive. We're all adults. We can decide what.
Yeah, I mean,
What
if
makes
you're home
sense.
because you're the sole caretaker, then you might not even join Zoom, right? Because
Yeah,
you're not
well,
going
and
to
I
be able to
didn't
focus on
on
Zoom.
Tuesday. Yeah.
And I personally would prefer that people keep their cameras on if they are focused and they are present in a Zoom meeting, that they keep their cameras on. But that's just, you know, you're right. We don't need to be overly prescriptive, and you know.
That's a great point.
Okay.
So.
Any further discussion? All right. So all in favor of doing the hybrid Zoom meetings?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I declare the motion carried. So Kim and I will work on making sure we have a Zoom link that we can use week after or month after month, and then we'll get that information to Bob and Bill so that it's set up. Thank you.
So I guess just one thing we have to keep in mind, if for some reason, like, we don't want to have the situation where everybody's remote, and we don't have somebody, well,
True.
I guess if we did, I guess if everybody is remote, we could just do it remotely, I suppose, but.
I mean, I would assume at any time the chair or the vice chair, which we need to work on, would be responsible for being in person.
Yeah.
Hopefully unlikely that both of them would be out.
That's
Okay.
fair. Yep, thank you.
Standardized meeting packet, Chris.
Yep.
I think Kim did a really nice job putting together the packet for this month. So I guess, is that what you were thinking?
It was along the lines, but I think that when I had emailed out, this was kind of in conjunction with the Zoom piece, and I was thinking that, you know, we often have a lot of committee reports that are oral only, and Kim had originally suggested that I supply the walkabout. I think it was a great idea, but if there are other reports that make sense to have in advance, I think it does make it easier for the Zoom participants in particular to, you know, be effective as part of the meeting. And so, you know, whether it's strategic planning, you know, we have director search coming up, we've got HVAC and other things. I think that just something to consider, and I don't know that it's even something we need to vote on, but just wanted us to consider, like, along those ideas of, can we, you know, are there ways of etiquette or processes that we could put in place that make it better? And it might have other ramifications as well, but yeah, no, thank you to Kim for suggesting it.
Yeah, I think the packet's also extremely valuable to get in advance to this group, because the more we read in advance, the less we're, you know, discussing everything in details as everyone's read it, and you can just focus on really those key questions and key items.
So, yeah, I don't know. There wasn't necessarily a suggestion from me to specifically do any particular committees or groups or subcommittees or whatever, but maybe it's something we kind of take back and discuss at a, you know, future meeting, unless people want to talk more now. But that was kind of the suggestion.
I think the only thing that comes to mind is I love it all being one packet, but can we maybe hyperlink each section so it takes you to the right page or something?
Okay.
We're at 52 pages.
I know that.
feel like
I
I'm
have-
scrolling
you can tell I have that
back and forth a
problem.
lot because I go back to the. So if that's not a lot of work, and that's probably easier than page numbers because those will change on you. So.
And I don't know whether Kim, I'm not a techie, and I don't know what technical acumen you have as far as those hyperlinks, but I think it was Amber in the town administrator's office who puts together the select board meeting packet.
Okay.
That can be upwards of 250, 300 plus pages. They do have the hyperlinks, and so maybe if you have any questions in that respect, that Amber or someone in the TA's office would be able to, you know, give you a tutorial on the quick.
Yeah, I think that would
Yeah, I mean, we do want to be mindful of your time as well, right?
Right.
Making sure that you're efficient because you've got a lot of other stuff on your plate. But
Right.
I would agree that would make it a lot easier for us, both in the meeting and before the meeting.
Thank you for
Aaron?
sharing that, Rachel.
Yeah, so great idea. I think the challenge is going to be because this is scanned in and it's stamped, right? You can see the town clerk stamp at the top, so at that point it becomes a piece of paper it's hard to go back and do OCR and
But she would have to distribute that before it gets stamped.
I can,
Right, you
and I
the-
can do that too. I can distribute it.
It's like
the
the original
board?
PDF, not
The
the
original
scanned.
one, yeah.
So you're only, she's only required to have the agenda
The
stamped.
agenda stamped.
In other words, the meeting packet
Right,
is not a requirement on the front end.
oh,
just the agenda.
Right.
okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other quick thing is similar to what the school committee does, because they have a separate website. They have meeting materials section on their website, and so what sometimes happens is that meeting materials may end up being added to the packet, and I would hate to have the expectation that every time a new document is added that you're constantly amending the meeting packet. And so I like the idea of the initial meeting packet being one document, but also considering that on the graftonlibrary.org web page or website, that somewhere meeting documents or meeting packet documents are somehow included there, because they're not, unlike the other committees and boards, we're not on the grafton-ma.gov domain. So
So you'd like to see that on the Grafton Public Library's website?
I think
But don't all the meeting minute, the packet gets posted on the town website, maybe a month or two later, not in advance of the meeting, but they do eventually get posted.
no, the minutes
It's
do,
just the
but
minutes,
the
not the
packet.
packets don't, okay.
And
The packet is not.
Oh, yeah, that's
on
right,
No.
not the actual.
And so the open meeting law requirement is that after the fact, the requirement is that any meeting materials become part of the record. You kill two birds with one stone if 99% of that stuff is going to be part of the discussion ahead of time. And very rarely will something be added that day, like a handout. And so you fulfill that requirement by having a meeting packet somewhere on the front end. Plus, as a public service, I always look at like the select board meeting packet that contextualizes a discussion.
Okay, thank
I know it's a lot of work, but it's just one of these things that most committees don't do that we really need to be doing.
So that whole meeting packet, like that, what I had sent out, would essentially get posted on the Grafton Public Library website as well.
Or wherever we decide to park
Okay.
the Board of Library Trustees stuff. But it would also include the handout of Chris's walkabout,
Yeah.
that type of stuff.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily amend the meeting packet, but it could be added as a hyperlink.
Right. What about
So
even the punch list?
The punch list too. I mean, it's been distributed. It's really public information,
Okay,
you know.
okay.
To the-
I'm a little nervous about the punch list because that might have vendor names, that might have
Yeah, there's.
peoples
there
that are
is-
dealing with it, like
That's
phone
true.
numbers and stuff like that.
Yep.
And
that's
that seems like that's more of an internal document.
but it's really not, because you emailed it. The
Part of the
punch list.
packet.
Once it goes to everyone.
Once it goes to everyone,
it should not be,
it's not
it
secret.
has to be
So,
public.
so Mr. Chair, can I ask that we, move the
Yeah, I want to
discussion?
move.
That's
I wanna
fine.
move this on.
That's
I think
fine.
that, I
I'm
think
going
what
to
we
need at least 15, 20 minutes to talk
That's
about my items at the bottom.
I think what
of
we
the
should
list.
do is have Kim think about different ideas on
Yeah.
where this is going to get parked, and we can talk about it then
Yeah.
next month.
Yeah, it's not an urgent matter, but I just wanted to bring it up. Thank you,
Yeah.
Aaron, for reining in.
Could I throw out just also that we kind of think about other committees or groups that might make sense posting stuff ahead of time and talk about that at the same time?
All right, so next item, speaking of the punch list, is the punch list. So I think, yeah, that's Rachel.
Yeah, and this is going to be really quick because I had put this on before Tom had resigned, and so I guess the comment is more around, we have the ongoing list, there's spots for priority, can we start thinking about how to group things and which ones we feel is a high, medium, low, just to see where we're feeling about it, if we need to put extra focus and energy on some of that stuff. Just worried the list was getting longer every week, right? And how could we support with it? But I would recommend we kind of pause that conversation for another meeting and it might be something as we talk about like different like subcommittees and stuff. I know we talked about the HVAC one, but it might be something where if that's a space that needs a little extra support,
Yeah.
we could think about something similar. But I think we can push that if everyone's good with it for another meeting.
Yep, okay.
Is
Just a
there-
very, very brief.
Yeah.
Today, Kim and I went through the punch list and organized.
Oh.
So we prioritized and made sure that everything was accurate and moved things around because there are certain things that gravitate towards the top, and we wanted to make sure that it was in as close to urgency order as possible. So it's in a good place.
Oh, thank you, Tom. I didn't know if that'd be too big of an ask with everything else you're trying to get buttoned up. So we appreciate it.
Was everyone able to access that punch list?
I was.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Next up is the unattended child policy, a proposed revision by Tom.
Very brief, just that it came up recently. The idea of having the teen room designated slightly differently, because currently it says 13 to 18 are admitted, but the request was to have it say 7th to 12th graders instead, because that 7th grade is an awkward one where you could have people who are 12 and 13 who are buddies and we want to go to the teen room together, and one's allowed in, the other's not. It also gets a little awkward with the unattended child policy. So I had brought this up just curious about it, if it was possible to do it. Doug, you seemed to indicate that you thought that there was some reasoning that the police department had.
Yeah,
Given.
I don't know if Aaron, defer to Aaron, but I thought there was a reason why that age was picked, the 13. And it was something to do with a conversation with the police chief.
It's possible, I don't remember.
Okay.
We have a new police chief now. I don't know
We
if
do,
he has a
yeah.
different opinion, but
Yeah, it was very heavily discussed with the law enforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I completely agree. I mean, I think most people travel with their school friends, and if
Right.
7th grade includes a mix of 12 and 13, then we might want to consider.
Right.
I would.
So
agree.
it.
Have you had any incidents? I mean, we're not checking IDs.
No, but the teen room asks,
Yes.
and asking how old you are seems invasive.
Yeah.
Whereas asking, hey, what grade you in, seems a little
Yeah.
more welcoming and engaging.
So can
So-
we just push this to the policy committee and have the policy committee look at
Right.
this?
So I think it would need to go. It would need to be considered by the policy committee because of the fact that we do have the unattended child policy.
Right.
Right. So I checked with the town, and just saying the teen room is open to 7th to 12th graders is fine, but it does have a potential conflict with the unattended child, because if you have 12-year-olds in there who their parents, they're there with their friends, but their parents are not in the building, then it's going against our policy.
Yep.
So it may need a rethink on how the unattended child policy is phrased.
So Aaron, can you take that up with the policy committee?
Yep.
Great. And speaking of, next on the agenda is the policies committee update.
Okay. So we have 4 policies that are still with legal. So that's kind of a bottleneck for us, right? So we haven't brought anything to this board for vote in quite a long time, and because of that. So I know that's, I don't know how many of our meetings I've said that, but so basically we get to the point where a lot of these are newer policies, right? And so we're taking the tack of, we want to take a look at existing policies, because some of them were approved back in 2020, right? And 5 years is a long time. So the policy committee went through all the policies on the website and ranked them by age, and also took a critical look at them to make sure that they were still valid, right? So if you look at the website now, you'll see a lot of them say under review. And the reason being is because it's under the purview of the director. that anything that is considered a procedure is really kind of under the library director's purview, right? I know I just said the same thing twice, but you know, but this is important, right? So really anything that is inaccurate, you know, procedural wise, then the library director has the, you know, by the MBLC, it's under their power to take it down from the website, essentially. So I know, Doug, you had asked about like, you know, the meeting room policy, and you know, you couldn't link to that because it's under review. So ideally, those need to be have a critical look by the policy committee. And I'm gonna be covering a lot of topics here, so just bear with me. So in addition, there are 32 policies here. Most libraries have maybe 10 or 12 policies. So this is kind of unmanageable for a small subcommittee to, you know, stay on top of, and I think that's why some of these have been lingering for more than 5 years. Plus, it takes a long time to move these through the different steps that we have. So when it comes to things like, you know, procedure, that's really kind of what the policy committee has been doing over the past, you know, 5 months, is really paring down policies that are 5 or more pages long to be 2 or 3 pages, because a lot of it is procedural. Now, I'm just going to skip right to the final piece here is, in order to have a functioning policy subcommittee, you need to have 1 trustee and 1 director, right? So right now we have just 1 trustee. And I know that they've operated that way in the past with just 2 people, but that was not ideal. That's the absolute bare minimum. Okay. Ideally, it's 2 trustees and 1 director, right? And we don't have 2 trustees right now, so or a director. So at this point, we're not operating anymore. So that's just something that we need to discuss as a board on if you agree or disagree about being able to operate and continue this work. We could potentially, if there were 2 trustees, we could potentially go through a lot of these policies ourselves, because at this point they're written and we need a director to help us write policy. But if we're revising, I think that's certainly under the purview of trustees to be able to do that. So it's overwhelming for 1 person to do, and I'm not going to ask the other policy subcommittee staff members to continue to be part of the policy subcommittee without a director.
Right.
Okay, so it really would just be, you know, 2 trustees if we determine we want to continue to do policy, and I think we have to. It's you know, it's our charter, or it may be written in stone for us in some way, shape, or form that's under our purview, and we have to continue that work.
Let me ask you through you, Mr. Chair, to ask Aaron. You make an excellent point that, Aaron, as far as, you know, things are written. There's only so many resources, as well as far as people's time, and the makeup of the committee needs to include a director. And as you were talking, it made me think of the way we address our bylaw review committee at town meeting every 5 years. Doesn't mean that someone can't, in the interim, try to bring a proposal or tweak a bylaw at any of those town meetings. And so, you know, do you, Aaron, think that it would be unreasonable to disband subcommittee and tackle policies every 3 years in the same way that we have a strategic plan or whatever every 5 years? Or do you think that maybe subcommittee doesn't even need to meet as frequently as possible?
That's a great point. And I didn't mention it, but that was one of the things we also talked about, is maybe meeting monthly is too frequent. I mean, granted, because of 32 policies, maybe we should be meeting every week, right? That's a lot of work
Right.
here. But ideally, maybe meeting once a quarter would be appropriate. And also, the last thing, and I'm throwing a lot at you guys because this is the time to do it. I don't know why we decided to meet in public session, and that makes it difficult sometimes to do some of this work. Because if it was a little bit more flexible, then I feel like we could kind of meet whenever we needed to meet and just kind of workshop stuff and being under Robert's rules and very making sure that there's quorum and approvals and this, that, and the other thing. I just don't know. Other subcommittees don't meet in public session, so I don't know why we need to continue doing that.
And,
I don't remember
it's
why we
it's
decided.
an open meeting law requirement that you need to post and meet in public.
But I thought that's only if you're making decisions as a board and a quorum. If you're making a subcommittee and you're just discussing things that you're gonna then bring to the board at this
Yeah.
meeting
I-
for public.
I don't think, I think we need to confirm that absolutely before we go down that path.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
bringing it up because
Right.
we felt as a subcommittee we didn't need to meet in.
I mean, there's only two of you in some ways,
Well,
right?
there was
Maybe
four.
three.
There was four of us. Four.
Two
But-
trustees.
But only two
Two trustees.
trustees,
Yeah,
Right.
one or two
five of
trustees.
us.
Yeah.
The quorum issue, yeah.
Yeah, it was
Can,
five.
can I ask a question? So if it's, I do remember even in the library building committee, the subcommittee for interiors and stuff, it was not a public meeting, but the outcomes,
Right.
what was discussed, and the minutes and everything, that was brought back to the library building committee, which is where the decisions were made. So I think we should check on that, and if it's to be reframed as a working committee, wherein you have flexibility that between the 3 members, 4 members, we come together and work on this and say, okay, here is what it is. Now here is what we are going to take back to the board, and then it gets discussed here. So I think there is some nuance that we need to
Right.
get some clarification.
But to the larger point and the more important point is how frequently do you really need to meet? And I'll add that at what point do you put the brakes on? I mean, you don't entirely put the brakes on because I think of like the 3D print stuff that is developing is being implemented like for the first time, but those things which are already implemented, we probably once they're approved by legal, or given the go ahead for us to vote on it, that there's probably a lot of stuff we could probably put the brakes on, even if we think that it could be tweaked. The whole document doesn't always necessarily have to be a work in progress.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that having like an ad hoc, right, the director comes to us or the staff member comes to us and says, here, there's a problem with this policy, then you have an ad hoc meeting to review that. Now, if there's a lot of those, then monthly might be good.
Right.
But
So what I need from the board, right this minute,
Okay.
and really, I'm going to give this to you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Right, is we're not operating without another trustee.
right.
So I need somebody either to, be appointed or volunteer. But it doesn't have to be right now. We just won't operate until we have another trustee. Or a director, if we decide we need a director to also operate.
right.
So I'm saying that we could probably work with 2 trustees.
Yep.
Yeah.
So given that, do we have any volunteers that want to volunteer right now? Or,
If it's possible to do it virtually, I volunteer.
Yeah.
I cannot guarantee to be in person for another meeting.
Yes, we can meet virtually. Meeting in public session was difficult for us because we got Zoom bombed, and then we decided we have to meet in person, and we got Zoom bombed bad. Like you were talking about just booting one person, we were talking about pornography all over the place. It was disgusting.
okay, so I would, if I need to appoint, I'll appoint Prabhu as the second trustee in that committee. And then given, who do you want to assess the need for the public meeting piece? Do you want me to reach out to the town, or can you reach out to the town? Or can Roger reach out to the
Google. All right. In Massachusetts, a subcommittee of a public body is also subject to the open meeting law if it's a multiple member body created to advise or make recommendations to the parent body. Sounds like a
But is that a quorum?
no.
Or is
It says
greater than one?
No, it says greater than one. This applies even if the subcommittee's quorum is less than that of the full public body. Essentially, if a group is formed to advise or make recommendations, and it includes multiple members, it's considered a subcommittee and it must adhere to the open meeting laws requirements. That necessarily includes posting and keeping minutes and voting on minutes in the whole 9 yards. And so, so this, and that I think would include the subcommittee for HVAC. Seriously, I mean, they don't make a distinction. So.
Yeah, I guess I will follow up on just
Okay.
reviewing that
Yeah.
with the town and
Please.
The
with
town
state.
clerk, the town clerk would be the
Town-
go-to
okay.
person, yeah.
Yeah, I can do that.
And if there is.
Because that
not-
seems
so-
very burdensome for a committee that's gonna then present the options in the open meeting for decisions, right? There's no decisions, but anyway,
Right.
I recognize
Yeah,
it.
I can't refute what you just said.
Yeah, exactly.
And-
That's why we're
Except
doing
it was
that way.
Google.
I think no, but you know what though, the thing is too, is that, the open meeting law has gotten so voluminous. I would agree that many aspects of it seem burdensome. But, you know, it is what it is.
We have to conform to it,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
May I ask one last question on
Yep.
this? Given the fact that, like Aaron mentioned, you have 32 policies, and then I see that many are under review. If that open meeting law doesn't give us the flexibility for the subcommittee construct, can we look at a task force to, that can be another piece that we run through all this as a very set agenda for the next 3 meetings or something? We focus on this, not as a subcommittee, but as a task force, if that is an option that is available, working committee or something.
Yeah.
You mean this board?
Members, some members of this, as a group of people.
Yeah, I don't know how the little nuances differentiate
Right.
from that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But I will explore those options with the town clerk.
Can I ask one question about something Aaron said slightly different? So if
Yeah.
we have any more on that one. I was looking, are all the ones that are under review currently not posted anymore on the website?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
the link is broken.
So,
Yeah.
so there's something that's either illegal or inaccurate that the policy committee and the director have determined we can't have them posted anymore because it could be illegal or
Okay.
something that
Or
we're just-
incomplete.
incomplete or something that's outdated or invalid, right?
So
So some of these policies could have been written 20 years ago. And, you know, we may have been just rubber stamping them, and at some point, a critical eye said, hey, you can't do this anymore. You know,
Okay.
so that's kind of why they're under review. Sorry.
So, no. So I just wanted to check because, like, I would assume the policy is still standing until the new one is in, unless we vote that, like, does there need to be a vote that we're, like, pausing the policy? And then I guess my other questions, I just wanted to confirm, like, the parking policy, like, is it because we're making some tweaks to improve it, or is it really that, like, there's something illegal or something like that, or we're pulling it down? Because usually policies are effective until a new one takes its place
I
and
know.
or you end it.
I would
So don't
think
know
that these are all effective. I mean, unless there's a legal issue with them, if it's just some content in them, I would think they're still effective because we need the policies in place.
Well, and if it's effective, I guess we should link it so people can see it. So I don't know how that works, Aaron.
Well, I'm going to refrain from my opinion and let others talk about that because it's certainly up to you if you want to put something that may have language that, you know, it's going to be considered illegal or.
But many of these were reviewed by legal, right? Or are they, some of them predate that legal review?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and I guess my question is like, if they're legal, right? That illegal, that's very
different.
different. And like, should we like vote to like take them down in the interim? Because like, I just want to make sure they're really not effective anymore as well.
Yeah, I think you have to if there's a problem with the policy.
Sorry, Tom.
Okay, can I just
Yep.
put a little
Tom?
bit in here? So the policies that are grayed out are still in effect, but they are not active links. They've all been archived so that they're available to you. So if you wanted to review some of them, Kim can certainly get that for you. The reason that certain ones were grayed out, and I'll use the parking policy since you mentioned it because it's a good example. It's factually wrong. It's from start to finish. It's factually wrong. And so even though it went through legal, I imagine it did, legal's not checking to see whether it's correct or not. They're looking to see whether it's legally sound or not. And so that one particularly says that that policy reads that the library parking lot, the parking lot adjacent to the library is really what it should say, but the library parking lot is only exclusively for library business and is not able to be used by anybody who is not there for library business 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which goes completely against it being a municipal lot. So,
I mean, that particular policy was because of the grant, and we were told that because of the grant, whether that was correct.
you were
we
told
yeah.
is
And it's-
is the operative phrase
and
there,
The
right?
policy is different than policing the policy, right? But you're right.
Right. So that did come up last year. You may recall that with an incident with the farmers market, there was on a Wednesday afternoon there was a children's room program that was taking place, and the farmers market was taking place at the same time, and staff members closed the lot. They put up a sign saying that the lot was only available for a library event. Which was based on what they had been told and based on what the policy said, but is not correct. And so, unfortunately, people started calling the town, and the town let me know that it's a municipal lot and it has to be available to everybody. And then I clarified that with NBLC. I spoke to 2 different people at NBLC, and they clarified that the understanding of the grant was inaccurate, in that it was believed that what the grant was saying was that the spaces could be designated for library use exclusively. What it was actually saying, according to NBLC, is that since there's the grant, they will back us up if people try to take spaces from us. So if Cumberland Farms said, you know what, these first 4 spaces in here are actually going to be Cumberland Farm spaces, and they tried to designate them for themselves, then NBLC will send in backup for us to make sure that we don't lose spaces in that lot. But when it comes down to it, it's a municipal lot, and we can't tell people whether they can use it or not.
Right, and I'll add 2 things to that, and I know that, Aaron, I know we're under the
Yeah,
gun,
but
Right.
also,
I don't-
we can't be talking,
I know.
nuances of policy right now, but if you want to add something, please. I do want to address your question, because one in particular, that was a good one to bring
was
up,
a
by
good
the way.
example, yeah.
But
Yeah.
notary service, we don't give notary services anymore. It has to come down.
Yeah.
Right.
It should not be there linked anymore.
and so,
So, by that
Yep.
designation, we should pull all of these off the site if the policy committee believes that there's a problem with them.
Aaron, you're absolutely right. We could talk about stuff and go off on a tangent. What I want to ask you, Aaron, is what are the 4 policies that are under legal review? You said there were 4. Which
Yeah,
are they?
it's the same. It's the same ones that we've been talking about. It's the
Is it the ones that say under revision?
it
There's
is
like,
the
like there's
No.
facilities
3D?
rental?
so, sorry, it's
No.
the epidemic pandemic policy, program policy, volunteer policy, and the library displays policy / materials selection policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, certainly, yeah, I think we need to figure out how to get the policy committee active again and how that meeting is going to be arranged.
Yep.
And to me, it seems like those ones that are under review, need to be prioritized to obviously be addressed first. I personally think that the facilities rental policy should be a high priority because, it's always been the goal of the trustees and the building to have that facility, the community room available after hours.
Great.
And the director has identified some issues with the current policy, so we need to try to figure that out. And that might be the case with the parking and some of these other policies that have been grayed out.
But that's difficult without a staff member involvement.
I know.
It'll be hard for me and Prabhu to make those distinctions.
Yep.
So I guess, if we can get some of Tom's time to highlight what it is the policy, what Prabhu and I need to review and revise.
Yep. Is that, Tom, is that something that, a staff member brought up to you, or are most of these issues that you identified?
I worked closely with Mary Mertlin,
Yeah.
the head of borrower services, and so I would refer to her.
Yep.
Well, I shouldn't refer to her because she's not an employee of the, under the designee of the trustees, right?
No.
Yeah, but she could be the staff volunteer for the, policy committee, once that works out, right?
Do you,
She's been a member of the subcommittee.
do you anticipate having Kim and Mary still operate on the policy subcommittee without a director?
I don't know if that would be my decision.
Right.
I mean, I would say yes, but we don't know what that interim, and it
We've-
seems like we don't have the interim director, right?
Yeah,
There's
we-
gonna be a period of time where
never
we
had-
don't have that,
We've never had staff on that committee without a
without
director
the,
present.
without the director.
But I don't see if if we don't feel that there's a problem with that collectively, okay, and Tom doesn't see a problem with that, then we can still operate, potentially via Zoom if at all possible. But we'll wait
what-
until we hear back from you about whether we need to
Right.
meet. And right now we'll have a posted agenda on the 17th. The policy subcommittee actually asked me. They said that in the absence of a director, they don't believe we should meet anymore. I'm just letting you guys know that. So this is contrary to what the policy subcommittee had already kind of
Right.
discussed, that we should not meet without a director.
I mean, my concern is there might be a long period of time where we don't have a director or an interim director.
Correct.
And so someone has to fill that role temporarily, whether it's
Yeah.
town administrator or,
I could potentially send Mary an email, right? If she's been, and perhaps if under your, purview, redline the areas that she feels that Prabhu and I need to review.
If you're looking for suggestions as to what about this policy is incorrect,
Yeah.
I mean, I think just even if it's not an official subcommittee, just a conversation with a library staff member would be appropriate. I mean, I would tend to feel that the committee should pause until a new library director is in place, just because different directors have different opinions on things. I mean, it's not hard science, right? There is a nuance in volunteer. So,
yeah, the question is whether it's the new permanent director, or it's the interim director, or the acting director.
And
Right.
we don't know how long that's gonna be
Right.
before those, either
And
those
some of
are-
these policies are really important to get back effective.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's the dilemma.
so, I would say at least short term, we'll
sorry,
pick.
if
Yep,
I mean,
sorry, Tom.
ultimately, I'll just say, now, this was a decision I made, but with me stepping back, if the board chose to relink all of the ones that we took down, quote unquote, I think that's in your purview.
Yeah, I mean, we would need to know the items the reason why, right, you were contesting it or whatever.
Do you have like notes on why? Like,
I do for some.
We do for some, yeah.
Okay.
I think that would be extremely helpful to have those compiled for the policy subcommittee, whatever you have to work off of.
Okay, so Prabhu and I's goal is to look at the ones that say under review as a priority, and then by the next meeting we can decide if we want the policy subcommittee to continue to operate without a director.
Right, and
Okay.
do we want the trustees to approve policies without a director?
Okay.
Okay,
And I think the open law, or the open
Yeah, I
meeting
think
law
that's the
thing,
big
like, can they be a
question.
working committee or,
right,
right,
Yeah.
that was,
So at this point, we will continue to operate as a,
open meeting.
open meeting, an
Yep.
open
Yeah.
meeting law until
Yeah, that's to be
otherwise directed.
conservative. Okay,
Okay.
well, thank you, Aaron. I mean, as we've talked about, policies are one of the trustees' really important responsibilities to help the director and the staff with those policies.
Yep. So that we don't have to also discuss policy towards the end, because it is an important topic and it is under one of our, oversight as a board. I'd like to move this to the much higher in the agenda, especially not under new business, right? I know it's not under new business, but policy updates kind of
Yep,
the tail end.
I agree.
and-
It's always last and it always gets the end.
Yeah. So Kim, would you mind moving that up?
Up to ongoing business.
Okay.
I agree with Aaron on this. I think it's overdue. You had mentioned it a few times. It really gets, we really find ourselves rushing through it, and it's a disservice, I think, not only to the committee, but to you as having spent, and the other subcommittee members, having spent so much time on this, and sometimes we don't get to it,
Yeah.
or you find yourself rushed. So, yeah, it absolutely belongs earlier on in the agenda.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's really important for the staff to have clear policies that they can refer to when they're addressing the patrons.
Even higher than I would say maybe walkabout or even ongoing business. So I think as a board we should address the things that are specifically in our purview, which would be policy, building maintenance, walkabout would be up there as well. Trusts and approval of bills, right? And that should be it. Those are the big three for us. And then everything else can be ongoing business and new business.
Yep, I would say move it up to number 4.
Yep.
And push ongoing business down.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Strategic plan.
Yep. So, good news. I found somebody who is willing to work with us. She's a library director who is in the state, and she's helped other libraries with their strategic plan. I got her name through another trustee, and this was actually a few years ago, where they had given us a couple of names, and it turned out that particular town library did use this person, this director, to help them with a strategic plan. However, that person is no longer a trustee because this has been a couple of years since I had reached out. But that person's willing to talk to us about how it went, because I still feel like even though they had somebody doing the strategic plan, with them, there was a lot that the board had to do. Now, a library director and somebody who's doing strategic planning, their time is few and far between to work with us also, so we have to take that into consideration. Okay, so that's the good news. The not so great news is I need to take a step back from this, right? So I've been working on this for over a year, more than a year, for as long as I can remember. I'm not making the type of progress that the board needs me to make. So I want to hand this back to the board as something that somebody else should take the lead on. And happy to hand off everything that I've kind of come up with, but I'm kind of overloaded in other aspects of the board duties and also outside of the board as well.
Yeah, I think my one idea would be to, push it back to the chairperson, which would be me for now, but really to put this on pause until we figure out the library director, or do you think it's really important for us to be making progress in advance of the library director?
So I owe these people a response who emailed me frankly over a week ago.
Yeah.
So I can tell them that but here's the problem. The reason why we put this on hiatus a few years ago
Right.
is we were searching for director.
Right, I
Right.
know.
And we're going to do the same thing again. Right. So that's really on us if we want to decide to make this also a priority for the board too. And I know what I've been hearing is, yes, we do need to make this a priority. It's well overdue.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a full board. We're not looking for new members, right? So I think between 7 board members, this could be something we could continue to do also while doing a director
While doing the
search.
director search.
That's
Yep.
just my opinion. But
I-
again, my opinion doesn't count because I'm stepping away from it.
Aaron, are you recommending that we find who's going to do the strategic plan and then wait for the director to actually do the strategic plan, or are you suggesting that we find and start the strategic plan without the director?
I've never been part of this before, honestly. Maybe that's also why it's taking me longer than most. But I don't know how much the director participates in the strategic planning process. Is it a lot?
Well, I think certainly,
Yeah.
certainly early on, and Carrie, you can fill in blanks too, but certainly early on, a lot of the activities around polling the community, having like community meetings, understanding what the community wants, based on especially the new library, the new space. So I don't think that, I mean, the director was involved in that, and obviously they're gathering a lot of information as well and can contribute, but I think the early stages of that can be done without the director.
Does that, Mr. Chair, then assume that we had the quote-unquote appointing authority for this committee?
For the strategic plan, I believe
Yeah.
so.
And then if so, what are the parameters of who belong, who's going to be the makeup of the committee? Because the last time it was just whoever had raised their hand that was interested, and it was very loosely organized as far as not having parameters of, how many trustees, how many members of the public, how many staff members, and so, not to jump in the weeds, but to jump in the weeds, what are the parameters? What's the charge? How many in number, and what the makeup of that committee is?
And I think I'm open to
Yeah.
ideas as
So-
well.
Beyond the scope of this discussion tonight, but just, it's something I think we need to think about.
Yeah. I guess my thought, I mean, this is gonna be very time intensive to look for an interim director and also a new director. I don't think that we can take on doing the strategic plan at this point. I think we really need to get focus. I was agreeing with me. But I mean, certainly, like it's the work that you did to identify those people is great. Maybe if we could just let them know, just be honest and say, we're conducting a director search. We were putting this on pause, but we are so appreciative, and when please allow us to reach out to you, if in the future when we're ready to revisit this. We don't want to waste your time at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Mike,
That's fine, but we need to decide as a board if we're going to put this on hiatus, and I think
Right.
that's what you're proposing, right?
That's definitely what I'm proposing.
I mean, we do have a board of 7. We have, you're gonna have 2 in the director search. So, I mean, there are other slots that could,
It's more
initiate.
than 2 in the search because we also have to interview the final candidates as well.
at the end, that's true.
And I guess
And also all these policies too.
I mean, to Roger's point, the consultant probably has good ideas on the makeup of that group.
Right.
So I think they would be able to provide a lot of good input for us when we're actually thinking about how we're gonna put the group together.
I can ask this person if they feel that we shouldn't move forward with this process, even though we're severely delayed,
Yep.
without a director. Does that sound appropriate?
I think that's great to get their opinion. I also want to be cognizant of the staff who are going to be taking on, again, a lot of additional responsibilities because that consultant's going to need a point person at the library. So if you think about like just trying to coordinate meetings, set up meetings, you determining who to reach out to. It is a lot of work for the director, like a strategic plan, even though you have a consultant that's helping to run it, it is going to be time consuming as well for, the library staff to support that activity.
Yeah, and I guess
So-
the other question I would have too is I don't know if I've seen a strategic plan done without the leader there because at the end of the day, that leader is going to have to execute on that plan for the next 5 years, and that's very hard to bring someone into. Like, it's one thing if the strategic plan's been completed and then the transition happens. And I believe probably you said you do a lot of strategic
Yeah,
planning. Like, have
in my
you
role.
seen that before where they do it without the leader and then bring
No,
the
no,
leader
I am
in?
the leader who has to execute it. So
Okay. Oh,
Right, I mean,
okay.
especially if, like you said, if that strategic plan is in place before the person starts, that makes sense because they're just executing, but in this case, it's not
We'd
existing,
be
so.
planning
So
without the leader.
I would be in favor of having Aaron go back to the consultant and just get their opinion on the timing relative to the director.
Okay, so that'll be the last action on my part, and I'll
Correct,
CC you
and then
on
you
that
can see it.
communication.
Yep, and then I
I
can
can
take,
continue to CC you if you'd like me to,
Yeah, thank you.
because I know I've been kind of feeding you information.
Yep.
Okay.
and then we can take it from there, and if we decide to initiate the committee, then at our next meeting, we'll get some volunteers.
Great.
if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, probably.
I think, on a serious note though, I think the biggest strategic plan is to get permanency in our library
Library
director.
director.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay,
And I will say, not having a strategic plan just means we can't apply for grants. And really, the only one who's applying for grants is generally the director, anyways, or some staff members, right? And I don't know that we have. Do we have any grants or
Nope.
anything the staff?
Nothing currently.
Okay, right. So it was huge when we were looking for the MBLC grant for the building.
Right.
Yep.
So.
I mean, and it's only MBLC stuff. I mean, even while we didn't have an active strategic plan, library was awarded a $25,000 grant through Mass Office on Disabilities municipal grant program. So it's really only the MBLC grants. I mean,
Oh, right.
didn't preclude the library from
Great point.
getting awarded that Mass Office on Disability grant. So I don't think we're in a bad place. So.
yep.
Very good.
Okay, well, thanks, Aaron, for all the time that you've spent on this in the last year. So,
Welcome.
so I think policy update, we kind of merged with the policies committee, or was there a second
No,
different? Okay,
I think it's just on there twice.
so then the final agenda item is the director's report. So that was included in the packet. I don't know, Tom, if you want to hit a couple of the key points.
Key points have been hit.
Yep.
Pretty much. So, HVAC and everything else that we've discussed the evening. I did include the numbers for the library for the fiscal year, since we're coming to the end of the fiscal year. So I thought you'd want to see how we're doing in terms of CERC. And then the only other thing that I would want to talk about that we haven't discussed is staffing. So I'll just hit that one. This is my last director's report. So staffing is looking for one position that I know of. And so just a couple of things that I wanted to bring up is since we are coming to the end of the fiscal year, and I did make sure that I remained with the library to get you through the fiscal year. But right on the heels of that are the errors reports. And so I encourage you to be quickly thinking about who would be taking that on, because they don't open until July 1st. They're due, last year it was due like August 16th or so. And so you're going to want to have somebody who's responsible for filling that out. They will open July 1st, as I mentioned. Doug, I forwarded to you an email that I received from MBLC with the login and password for the library.
Yep.
So we have that information already. As of next week, somebody can start logging in. There is training that's available, which I did last year, and it was very valuable. MPLC, I don't recall seeing any indication of the trainings taking place. So perhaps because I'd already done it, that wasn't on the list anymore. But there is one more session, which is July 9th from 10 to 12:30. I would strongly encourage you to make a decision before then of who's going to be taking that on and get them to attend that workshop.
What date again?
July 9th.
Do you have a contact at the MBLC that can
Yep.
answer any of our questions with
Yep.
ours? Yeah, if you could
Yep.
pass that on to me.
Actually, the person who sent the email that I forwarded to you
Okay. Okay. Great.
is a really good person to reach out to.
So I have a question, but did you have a question? I'm sorry,
did,
I
yeah.
interrupted
I was
you.
trying to go
Okay.
through the chair.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
so,
Yep.
so I did have a question. So first, was there anybody who expressed interest on our library staff in helping on those reports? Would you have? So I understand that it opens on July 1st. Your last day is July 11th. Obviously you're not going to be able to finish the reports, but is it possible to sit with somebody to kind of just kind of walk through with them how it works?
I would be willing to give some assistance for that as while I'm still here. I think it's best to have one person doing the report, right? So I mean I don't want to start putting numbers in and then have there's supposed to be one person who's responsible for it, and that will be the person who's submitting it. But I'll be happy to sit and walk through what I know. As to has anybody expressed interest, I'm cautious about volunteering anybody, just because that's certainly up to them. But that said, I have discussed it with the head of borrower services, and because she has done it in the past.
Okay.
So a previous position that she was in, she was a library director, and so she was responsible for doing it. So she may regret that I said that, but but it would be a good place to start, I would think.
And I had a
And then
question.
do any of the numbers pre-populate from previous
Yes.
submission? Yeah.
Yes. So I have the printout of the questions from last year. They changed slightly. They're usually new questions that are added each year. For the most part, it stays the same. I have that printed out. I have all my notes from the workshop from last year. I have, I believe I have a printout of the final version with the numbers in it. And as well, when you log in to look at it, it gives you last year's numbers.
Terrific.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
And then
So-
Roger?
Yeah, okay, so is it the managers that then feed data from their respective areas to you or to the database?
It's a number of spreadsheets that are in our shared drive.
So
That-
are we up, are those, not to single anyone out, but as a totality of those responsible persons, are we up to date? I know we're in the last quarter, but is the expectation of those individuals monthly, quarterly, and however periodic those deliverables are they current?
They are in the process of being updated because there were certain areas of the reports that fell behind.
All right,
That people were not filling them in on as regular basis as I had hoped, and I have contacted all those people to express the urgency. And Doug, you were copied on that
Right,
as well.
I saw that.
all right, so I just want to make sure that, we're an executive board. I'm cautious that we somehow get involved in being a working committee. But it's always all hands on deck. And so I just want to make sure that between now and your departure, you being the director of, their director, and their boss, that those get acted on, and that hopefully there's enough time to get those deliverables finished, and if necessary, again, all hands on deck for whatever extra time may be needed to sort of play catch up. That's my biggest concern of how much in arrears that is.
Yep.
And I don't need to know those details, but we're really under the gun.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say that should be one of your top priorities, at least to get that data from the staff. Someone can
I have
correlate it.
been in regular correspondence with them, and actually spoke to a person today about this. Yeah. So
Okay.
They
Great.
certainly understand the urgency and of having the numbers accurate.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Doug,
Up to date.
Just one more
One last
question.
thing with you, Carrie.
So with regards to the training session that you're proposing, how much does that cost? Does that require
No
approval?
cost at all. No cost at all.
Okay.
And
It's
then-
not like it's like a virtual session?
Virtual session.
question, that's
Yep.
I think it's going to be really important that we have a staff member step up, because I don't think any member of this board,
Oh, yeah.
we can support them obviously, but we're not going to be able to create we can review the AIRS report, but we're not going to really be able to populate it, I don't think.
Mr. Chair,
Roger.
two things. Is that, would that be, and maybe that's a question here about whether that's outside the scope of the union agreement, and so we need to be mindful as to how much we push that task, and whether that's within the scope of the union agreement, even
don't-
if someone volunteers.
Yep, I don't know if Tom has an answer, but I think that's one of the regular yearly responsibilities of the library, so I would expect that to be part of that.
All right. And,
Maybe not explicitly written, but
No, but in other words, someone being in
Assumed.
charge of doing the whole report versus doing
Oh, I see.
their piece.
Yeah.
The other question I have, and this is one that really concerned me about, with all the sort of the Elon federal cuts, how the various library funding that flowed down that funds a lot of our museum passes, have we been adversely impacted?
No, museum passes are funded by the Friends.
Yeah, the Friends paid
So,
for
so
that.
that
Okay.
that's not affected in any way.
All right. Oh, I didn't know whether the entirety, all of them.
all of them were done
Yep.
by the.
That's
Okay.
the majority of the $10,000.
Okay, I thought that some of them were funded in a way that was sort of public monies.
Yep.
All right,
Nope. All
Okay.
by Friends money.
all right.
Are
thank
there?
you.
Yep. Thank you, Roger. Are there any other questions related to either the AIRS report or the director's report?
One item,
we need to remember to sign bills in
Yes.
Tom's absence. Now, Kim, were you able to get something from the town that, records our signatures?
I did reach out to
Yep.
accounting. Unfortunately, it was pretty late, so I'll have an answer tomorrow.
Okay, great.
But our signature should still be on file.
Our signatures, it's primarily
Yeah,
for
ours
Rachel and
for
Prabhu.
5, right?
Yeah, but they
yes,
may
you
want
signed
to, I'll,
those.
I'll do
Oh,
it
you
again.
didn't?
Okay, doing it, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
I came in last
So
May.
Kim, if you can let me know
I
and we can
will.
make sure that's done.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I mean, between the 4 of us, we can cover, but we obviously want everybody.
And I'm pretty close to the library, so I'm happy to stop by and sign things
Yep.
as needed. So.
Okay, great. All right, we have one public, sort of. You have any public comment? No comment? All right, so next meetings, the Friends is gonna be July 8th, at 7:30, Zoom meeting. Policy Subcommittee, as Aaron mentioned, is July 17th. That's the posted agenda. And then our meeting is set for July 23rd. So does anybody have any known issues with July 23rd? If there are, just let us know sooner than later, if we need.
I likely will, but the last 2 weeks of July. But with the hybrid policy, that may work.
Okay,
Figure that out, yeah.
well, if you don't know now, you can just let me know and we
Okay.
can decide if we wanna try to reschedule, or if it's just one of us, then we can do the Zoom. Okay, one thing that didn't make it on the agenda is the reorg.
Yes.
We don't have a vice chair right now, and certainly, I could step down from chair and support you guys some other way. So if you have any interest in being a chair or vice chair, think about it. And I guess next month we'll
Yeah, well,
potentially reorg.
I think we should just add it as a line agenda
That'll be an
to
agenda
get
item.
it done.
Yeah. So Kim, if you can add that, board reorganization.
You got it. Thank you.
I'm certainly, if one of the new trustees, right, if anyone's interested in being chair long-term and wants to kind of start as a vice chair, or if one of the more experienced people want to come back as a chair and want me as a vice chair, we can entertain a number of different scenarios.
And Mr. Chair, I'll mention to the newbies that I stepped in as chair in my second meeting. So,
he did.
I don't know if that
I
was
thought it
such
was
a.
like our first meeting. almost.
Well, we got voted in, and then we agreed to have the interim person finish out the meeting, and I would be chair upon adjournment. But
as
yeah.
you guys witness, I don't know, I have
was-
the whole board to help,
yeah,
answer various questions that I might not know.
but don't be shy in taking leadership roles, as you've already done, right out of the gate.
Other game, yeah.
So
Okay. So with that, I'll entertain if there are no other questions, comments, discussions, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
so move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? I declare the motion carried. I declare, adjourned at 9:30 PM. A long one.
Yeah.